So, first, as we do all the time with our on our community chats, we're going to do a quick introduction of everybody. We have some very new champions to welcome. I am Lou Blaustein, founder of Eco Athletes. You guys know me. I don't have to say anything more. I'm going to hand it over now to Patches.
I'm Eco Athletes strategic advisor. I do a lot of our social media stuff in addition to the strategies and planning. So you'll be interacting with me in that vein and that lane pretty often, and happy to see all of you.
And Patches and I both are Rutgers University grads. Are
you.
All right. That's required for all of our
Now we have a quorum.
Now we have an official meeting. I am now going to ask Kate Strong to introduce herself.
Hi everyone, I'm obviously British, hence the accent. I suppose my background is I was age group world champion in triathlon 10 years ago for Australia, and more recently 3 years ago broke 3 world records in cycling to talk about gender equality in sports. And last year cycled 3,500 miles around Britain on a handmade bamboo bike, connecting communities, because I realised my body's getting quite old and I don't like competing at an elite level anymore. So I just go slow and steady. So that's pretty much what I do now. And next year I'm arranging a world record for a couple of thousand participants to clean up a river and talk about behavioural change and the power of collective action and collective voice, using a river cleanup as that sort of vehicle.
Awesome. And that's a modest telling of Kate's story. All right, Doug Lynch, you're up.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks, Lou, for organizing and Patches. My name is Doug Lynch. I'm from Vancouver, BC, Canada. I played 14 years of professional ice hockey, had a cup of coffee in the NHL, but most of my career was spent in the minors and in Europe. Retired, then I ran the NHL's grassroots hockey program in Asia for 2 years, leading to the 2018 Beijing Olympics. And from there, moved back to Portland, Oregon, and got into the textile industry. Started with the performance brands, the first brand ever using cotton as a base layer. And then that has morphed into running a technology material science company where we're licensing our technology now to the world's biggest brands and that want to become more eco-friendly, sustainable, and use less synthetics and less polyesters, which are toxic materials. So thanks for having me.
Staying with our friendly neighbors to the north, and always great to have you, Doug. I'm going to now hand it over to Oliver, who is a new Eco Athletes champion, and this is his first community chat.
Yeah, hey everyone, thanks Lou. Yeah, so as Lou mentioned, I am Oliver Schofield. I also live in Vancouver. Doug and I actually have met a few times around this stuff. Yeah, I spent the last 10 years playing on the men's field hockey team up here, including at the Tokyo Olympics, and one World Cup and 2 Pan Am Games. Recently retired earlier this year. I now run a sustainability consultancy called Racing to Zero, where we work directly with sport organizations here in Canada, but also worldwide, trying to help them understand and mitigate their climate environmental impact. But yeah.
And great to have you, Oliver, both on the chat and as an Eco Athletes champion. And it should be noted that Racing to Zero was founded by another Eco Athletes champion, one of our originals, Shay Smith. And let's see, now we go, you know what, I'm going to stay on this Canada theme. Jenny, you're up.
Hi, can you hear me? I'm in bad service.
Hear you fine.
Okay, hi, I'm Jenny. I'm also from Canada, like Lou mentioned. I unfortunately don't yet have any high, exciting environmental companies or businesses in motion, but I am very vocal and very excited to be a part of this group. I've learned so much. I just joined last year because I live on Vancouver Island, where we are very green conscious, and I wanted to have a bigger role and educate myself. So I'm more of an advocate and an educator to like children when I can, but more so I'm just here to learn and help as much as I can in whatever capacity. I'm a Paris Olympian, I am a Tokyo Olympian, and I'm currently maybe training for LA, moving to Tampa, moving to USA, and yeah, just excited to learn what else I can tell.
Awesome. Thank you, Jenny. Okay, now let's see. I'm going to hand it over to Caroline Webb at the great University of Connecticut.
Yeah, I'm currently a graduate student at the University of Connecticut, where I run track and field for the university. And my graduate program is in exercise science and kinesiology. And part of what I do within the lab group is work with heat acclimation and studying heat and exercise.
A very important work. Staying in the college sports ranks, let's go to Sophia Sanders out on the left coast.
I'm Sophia. I'm a senior at Stanford and I play water polo. And I'm also a co-president of Student Athletes for Sustainability and a course director, constructor of sustainability in athletics, where we get a bunch of speakers to come and talk to the students and teach them about what kind of opportunities there are in the sustainability space within athletics. So really excited to be here.
Great to have you. And I should also say, I don't think Jenny mentioned that she is a Paris Olympian and a Tokyo Olympian in lightweight rowing. So just to keep the rowing, get the rowing connection there. And then Allison, I believe, is somewhere near the Grand Canyon.
Yes, hi everybody. My name's Allison, and I'm from Tallahassee, Florida, but I'm in Flagstaff, Arizona now, and I am currently getting my master's at Northern Arizona and running cross country and track and field there. And I'm studying sustainable communities, which I'm really excited about and really excited to be part of this group.
Great to have you, Allison. And now I'm going to introduce another brand new, maybe the newest Eco Athletes champion, and that is Rudy.
Hey everyone, thanks for having me. Excited to be here and to be interfacing with all these incredible, diverse people. I'm a track and field athlete. I'm a 3-time Olympian. I throw the hammer. So I've been to Rio, Tokyo, and Paris. I'm the American record holder in the hammer, and I'm just excited to be here. I'm just kind of getting my feet under me with sort of being an environmental advocate. A couple of friends of mine are part of Eco Athletes, and I really like everything that Eco Athletes does and I've seen from them. So I wanted to get involved with it and start to kind of take my environmental, my views on environment and politics in general, and use my voice as an athlete to kind of advocate for those things a bit more. And then aside from that, which is something I don't even think Lou and I even talked about because it's more on the professional side, but I work in tech and IT consulting, and I'm very interested in environmental impacts of tech and the IT world in general. So that's something that I've kind of just started exploring and excited to talk more about and learn more about from all of you.
Awesome, Rudy. And two things that I just want to add to his bio is Rudy did his master's degree at
You.
and he catches on.
I
And,
missed that the last time we met, unfortunately.
and Rudy is getting married in a couple weeks. So
Thank you. Yeah, exciting stuff.
all right, now over to golf. And Selena, who we met when Selena was in New York a month or so ago.
Hi, I'm Selena. I'm from Germany, and I recently graduated from Vanderbilt University twice actually. So last year, my COVID year. And so now I'm onto the pro ranks. So I was super involved on campus and like with my academic studies and environmental like stuff and like climate change, but like I didn't really have a community ever that like was interested in that kind of stuff, like with athletes. So I'm really like excited to have like the eco athletes like fellow champions, and I'm excited to kind of see how maybe we can pressure like for golf, like the professional leagues, to kind of do better with some other fellow eco athletes champions at golf. So super excited.
And I'm going to stay with golf. I'm going to go, and also European golfer. I'm going to go over to Enya.
Hey everyone, I'm Ina. I'm from Slovenia. I play golf at NC State and Wayne State University, where I was kind of doing some initiatives in the athletics departments. Right now I'm in Vienna, living here, looking for a job, hopefully in a sustainability environment, and trying my best to brainstorm the heck out of my brain to find some good solutions and ideas for eco athletes to grow and grow.
Yes, this is.
Thank you.
And we had the pleasure, or I had the pleasure of meeting Enya at the US Open last in person, which was phenomenal. And Enya has been just a great ambassador for eco athletes and is a brainstormer par excellence. So we're glad to have her on this chat. And then, absolutely not least, but last but not least, is Sadie, who really helped drive the growth in our NCAA student athlete membership, and in fact connected us to Enya. So Sadie, you're up.
Yeah, Sadie, I graduated from University of Virginia through Discus there for 4 years. I graduated with an environmental science degree, and while I was there, I started up while I headed the green athletics program. And then COVID hit, and I expanded my reach to reach out to other student athletes at different schools. So I created ACC Sustainable Student Athletes as well. So that's where I got to meet Enya, and then it kind of snowballed into this collegiate division within eco athletes. So that was really fun. But right now I'm currently in tech sales. I work with state and local governments, and we deal with emergency management, which actually has a lot to deal with climate resilience. So it's an interesting path, but I'm just at the start of my career. So I'm excited to meet a lot of people who are a little further along and eventually connect, my passion to my job.
And just so you, I don't even think you're aware of this, Sadie. Now we have, as of today, 30 NCAA student athletes who are eco athletes champions from the class of 25 and forward. That doesn't even count the 24s and the 23s. So really, thank you so much for driving this. Thank you all for coming. We're really going to have two parts to this discussion that are related to each other. First, we're going to just take a look at Paris 24, which is a month in the history books, or less, actually considering the Paralympics, and what Paris got right and what they could have done better. And we have two folks from a sustainability and from climate perspective. We had 3 champions who were at the chat on the chat Tuesday, and we can kind of summarize what they said. But first, would love to hear from the champions who were there, who are on this call, and that is Doug, who was in Paris, and I believe Jenny rowing was outside of Paris somewhere. So what did you guys see, if anything? And what was your experience?
I can go first. Sorry, I don't have my camera on. I really do apologize for that. So if that's okay, I don't know.
No problem.
Okay? Okay,
Yes,
cool.
you're on.
So, okay, cool. Hello, everyone. Yeah, so I was about an hour east of the actual village, and Paris itself. I was at a place called Stade Nautique. In terms of sustainability and environmental consciousness, I thought there was a lot of, I would say, word play up in terms of what they were doing. I didn't necessarily see any extensive efforts to make the venue more well, a reduction in heat for athletes. Everything was really exposed. Everything was out in the sun. There was limited greenery and there was limited shade. So that was the first thing that I noticed right away. And I didn't see a lot of like garbage, and there was no pollution in the water. Of course, that's wonderful to see. However, as soon as I heard and saw the Seine for myself, I was pretty disappointed in the quality of the water along the riverbanks. There had really been no efforts to kind of continue what they had committed to of cleaning up that Seine. As soon as the opening ceremonies were finished, and as was mentioned in our group chat, the boats used for athletes were powered by gas and oil, and they just weren't. You could literally see the smoke, so that was disappointing, along with the fireworks and all the air pollution that happened at the games themselves. So that was a little disheartening to see. But in terms of the Olympic Village and sort of what they had shown the world and what was actually there, I'm sure Doug, I believe you said Doug was there in the village.
No, Rudy was there.
Rudy. My apologies, Rudy. But in the village itself, from what I saw, I was there for a couple of days. And Rudy can speak to this, but there was, again, minimal shade, minimal greenery. They clearly just, I think, revamped it to meet the bare minimum of somewhere habitable for the athletes. And then the structure of the buildings didn't seem like they were made with any quality material in terms of what they were going to be able to hold long term. So I don't see those buildings lasting very long. Therefore, they're going to have to either be left to ruin or reconstructed in some way. That was very disappointing to see. And they committed to the no lesser garbage and lesser bottles and what have you, but there was limited access to actually get reusable bottles anywhere. They tried this whole in our hotel, they tried to use glass bottles so that you would recycle them, but I couldn't find where the recycling was. There weren't reusable plates or cutlery, so that was good. They kept it to washable plates and cutlery, like everything was, they reused that. So I wasn't throwing my dishes out, which was nice, because I did do that. I was worried about that, given that we were satellite, and that's something they were saying they were thinking about doing. My biggest takeaway is that it just seemed a lot of, like, for face value, a lot of like empty promises when it came to what they were trying to do. And there was also just no promotion of what they were trying to do with sustainability. There was no talk about it. There was no, I at least didn't see any, exciting displays about everything they had done. It was, in my opinion, they just championed equity and equality for male and female athlete numbers to a greater extent than they did what they had done for the environment. And I think they missed a really big opportunity with the Paris Climate Act to kind of get on board with that and work with that. Something I'd love to see in LA is just, it's going to be a busy city. The transportation has to be better. It has to be greener. We used that's 20 minutes a day in a gas powered bus. It was not electric. So what they had done was they had, I guess, put electric buses for transportation for spectators, but when it came to athletes for all away venues, we were in buses every single day, 4 times a day. So yeah, just a lot of like kind of letdowns, I would say, in terms of the environmental mission they had committed to, and then what I actually saw.
And it sounds like, it sounds like it's that that they fell short also, especially since you were at a venue other than Paris. It sounds like they didn't give you guys, it sounds like they didn't give you what they were saying they would.
Yeah, and not only that, but it just didn't seem like a priority. So I would have expected it to be a little bit more exciting and a little bit more, noticeable. And there was none of that. And I was just kind of sad that they hadn't committed to what they had said they were going to do in terms of this giant green movement forward.
Now, to be fair, the 3 champions who reported on their experience in Paris, because they were all in Paris, they saw more, and we'll get into what they saw, but they saw more sustainability / climate action programming on the ground. Maybe that was more prevalent in Paris, but I'll ask Rudy to share what he saw, because you were in Paris.
Yeah, in Paris, in the village, I do agree that the sustainability and environmental things that they were trying to do definitely felt like maybe not an afterthought, but the full attention wasn't on that, which, with an event this size, the fact that they're thinking of it at all is great. I agree that there was no signage or really any mainstream promotion of the sustainability efforts that they were doing, but it did in the village, it was very apparent, and people were talking a lot about how it was a big initiative to have sustainability and environmental less of an environmental impact throughout the whole games. And there was things I think in the village, like yes, some of the buildings were a bit drab and built with non-sustainable materials, but they also reused most of those buildings. Those were apartment buildings that they bought out from the owners of them and then renovated them for the Olympics. And then the inside of them, yes, they were a little depressing and basically just drywall, but part of the reason for that was they repurpose those. They take the temporary drywall down and they turn them into apartments so that they can be reused by real people living in Paris going forward. So those are the types of things that sustainability wise, it's much better to be using the resources we have rather than tearing these buildings down and building them with sustainable materials. While that sounds like it would be good, the disposal of those old materials, the using new materials to build buildings obviously is quite a big environmental impact. I think in the village, they did a good job with most of the Olympics and Pan American Games and things I've been to. When you go to the dining hall, there's big fridges filled with bottles of sodas and drinks and all these things, and people just take armfuls of them and bring them to their rooms, or they eat them and then they throw them out afterwards, and it's super super wasteful. And I thought they did a good job with this games with they just gave you a cup and there was reusable or not reusable, there was fountains everywhere in the dining hall where you could fill up your reusable cups or a reusable bottle, which we did get a few of them in our kits when we got there, but I don't know if that was ubiquitous across all teams or if that was just a Team USA thing. So the accessibility to bottles, the accessibility to drinking vessels in general could have been a lot better. And then also the accessibility to fill those reusable vessels up in more places would have been great. Team USA's building was right next to the dining hall, so it wasn't difficult to refill, but there were some buildings that were quite far from the dining area, and there really wasn't many filling stations for water or for other drinks around the village. So that was definitely something that could have been improved on. Um, Trying to think of other things. I mean, they had bikes for people to use, which was great. They were almost always being used by everybody, so it was hard to get them, but the bikes were really great to get around. It stopped people from having to either walk, which is also, fine environmentally, but there wasn't any buses in the village, which has been a thing in the past. Um, there was these little golf carts, which seemed to be electric powered to get people around, which was great to see. I think overall the level of effort that they put into the Olympics this year in terms of environmental sustainability was much better than any other Olympics or Pan Ams that I've been to. Obviously, there's a lot of things that they can improve on, but it was definitely a step in the right direction. I think even just from the aspect of reusing the facilities, the stadiums and the arenas and things like that was huge. I mean, the lead construction is by far the worst thing for the environment. So limiting that as much as possible is really, really, really good. And I think that that's something that going forward would be really cool to see with the Olympics. I mean, I'm of the opinion that the Olympics should really only be in like 5 cities and in rotation, keep, do a city in each continent and just go to the cities that already have the facilities for it. So you don't have to be constantly making new infrastructure and replanning these things. It's just keep it consistent, and then every year you can put more effort into these sustainability initiatives to, it's easier to continuously improve on one city than it is to completely restart every 4 years in a new place. But again, a lot of things could be improved on, but I do think it was a step in the right direction.
Thanks for that. Thanks for that summary, Rudy, and that report. I'm just going to quickly share what were the main talking points from the three champions who were in Paris, plus our champion Lou Mial, who was one of our two reporters on the scene, although she was not in the competitions. She was not participating as an Olympian. So, and Patches, back me up if I'm missing anything. They saw much this, they had some of the very same comments as both Rudy and Jenny. They talked about, and as a positive, the emphasis on mass transit for the fans, getting fans to and from the games with mass transit was made very easy. And Paris has a great transit system, so they made use of that. They also talked about, I believe, the cardboard beds, or the beds in the Olympic Village that are reusable, recyclable. And they said I think it was Sam Mattis who said, who is Rudy's friend, who said he needed extra because he's a big guy. Let's see. They also talked about they talked about they saw signage for the fans about the plant-based food options, for example, which were more than typically is the case at the venues for fans to procure. The thing that they all said they fell short on was the water bottles issue. That was universal. Like, there just were water bottles everywhere. And then even with the reusable bottles, there was some system that made it kind of not so great. And those were the main things that I recall. Patches, did I miss any?
Well, I would say Ridian, being from Australia, pointed out that Australia and the US were right on top of bringing air conditioning into the buildings that were created and built without the hoping that there wouldn't be need for air conditioning, but no one wants to take that chance. So that was added. And he did say that it seemed to be impressive that when it was moderate enough temperature that you wouldn't feel the need to use air conditioning, that the buildings were very comfortable, like didn't seem to need a lot of energy to cool it down. Sam said that he thought the communication was great. Like, his description was that it was clearly made an issue and that the average fan and athlete would see, I guess, signage or messages about their efforts to be the most sustainable. He thought the biodiversity in the village was very cool, that he saw some work that was done to address stormwater in a sustainable way. There were solar cells
along the Seine.
Yeah, because he actually had a tour, so he saw more of the sustainable efforts than I think someone would have if they were just living in the village. He also brought up that the bridges were constructed with filters that would clean the air with the traffic to help mitigate that from the traffic that was going by. And then for Eliza, she thought that there was lots of wins. Eliza's from New Zealand, is that right?
Yeah, Eliza McCartney, pole vaulter.
Yeah, I mean, in her words, she said the marketing alone was a massive win. So they seem to think there was a lot of sustainability messaging. Plastic was infuriating. Everyone's agreeing on that. Needs to be better. And I think that's probably the rest of the color that I can say from the commentary that we had.
Yep. So overall, and this is with Jenny and Rudy's commentary layered on top of what we got from Tuesday night. Some wins, especially in terms of fan awareness building and actual kind of cool stuff on the ground, but also some big misses and opportunities to do better. And that pivots us to the brainstorm part of this session. And so, and this is open to everybody, whether you not an Olympic sport. And oh, we have one more new champion who's joined us since we started. Quick introduction, Gary Gilliam, you're up.
One second. Okay. You guys hear me?
Yep.
Yep.
Hi, everyone. My name is Gary Gilliam. I'm a former NFL player, turned real estate developer. Happy to be here. Lou, I don't know if I need anything else.
That's good for now. That gets you in the game. We'll be back. We'll be back to you. So this is for this is for everybody on this call, whether you're in an Olympic sport or not. Although I do see that American football, flag football, is now going to be an Olympic sport. What in 2028? Did not know that was being played beyond here, but whatever. If you're not or not an Olympian, will never be an Olympian, it doesn't matter. Everybody's voice is important, because what we want to do is take what we've heard and what we also know to be true, that athletes have outsized influence, not only on fans, but on business owners, CEOs, governments, etc. And to use our influence, or y'all's, but I'll use the our to include all of us, to push the IOC and LA28 and, World Track and Field, or whatever, FIH, is that the field hockey? FIHA or something, any governing body, to go faster, higher, stronger on climate. And before I open the brainstorm, I just want to share one important story that happened this summer within our movement that gives me confidence that we can really make a difference, and is why I scheduled this brainstorm. And that is, you guys probably saw that we had several open letters that were going around for signature, mainly among Olympians, this summer, calling out, in one case, the IOC and Toyota, the IOC urging the IOC to not renew its deal with Toyota because of the massive greenwashing from the world's largest car maker. We had 14 Olympians retired and current sign that. And then we got a form letter back, basically, from the CEO of Toyota. Then we signed on to another, athlete signed on, and this was Olympians and non-Olympians, to a letter to the CEOs of Coke, which was the Olympic sponsor, and Pepsi, while not the sponsor, which had a lot of kind of shoulder programming around the Olympics in Paris, to switch their emphasis from recycling to reuse. We got, I think, something like 40 odd signatures. Some of you are signatories on that. The one I want to focus on is, however, Lululemon, which the Canadians here know as the official outfitter of, and I think Oliver is sporting some Lululemon as we speak.
I'm covering it up.
No, the official outfitter of the Canadian Olympic team, and they are based in, I think, Vancouver. Is that right? So Lululemon has talked the talk on climate, but in terms of their actions, walking the walk, has fallen short, especially in their from their supply chain. Their carbon emissions per garment have actually gone up. So these open letters were led by these campaigning organizations, and they brought us in to provide athletes who would be interested in signing them. So in the case of Lululemon, the organization's called Action Speaks Louder. They understood that the Canadian Olympians who were, going to Paris, like our champions, Jenny, who I think had her call probably got dropped because she's not in a good location. Jenny, Melissa Humana Paredes from beach volleyball, who won silver there. They couldn't sign on to a letter. Oh, there she is coming back in. They couldn't sign on to a letter criticize, taking Lululemon to task, even though it was very like, here's what you've done well, you need to do better kind of tone. It wasn't like bad. Anyway, so they couldn't sign on to it. However, we got Olympians from other countries to sign on, and importantly, Margot Maloney, who was a beach volleyball Olympian from Canada at Atlanta 96 in the very first Olympic Games that had beach volleyball. So she's not as close to the Canadian Olympic movement now. She wrote an op-ed that got published in a national journal, a national newspaper in Canada, and then signed on to the letter. And this was sent to the CEO of Lululemon. And the CEO, McDonald, he wrote back. It wasn't, PR scrubbed like the other letters that we got back, and said, look, we hear you. Basically, I'm paraphrasing. We've got a new sustainability report coming out in mid-September. So I'm waiting to see what that looks like really now today, if it's out. And then after that, we're willing to talk to Action Speaks Louder about ways we can do better. And then Ruth McGlip, who's the campaigner from Action Speaks Louder, writes to me and she's like, this never happens. This does not happen. It's because the athletes signed on to it. So first of all, I just want to, even if you guys are not the individual signatories, that was one of the most amazing things I've heard in the 4+ years I've been doing, since we launched Eco Athletes. And that led to the idea, okay, that was Lululemon, that was 6 or 7 signatories. What if we got all of Eco Athletes to brainstorm ways that we could go to the IOC and to LA 28? And you may say, Lou, it's only 2024. We got time. No, in Olympic time, like that's pretty soon. So this is the time to do it. So we brainstormed on Tuesday and we got a bunch of ideas, and we're now going to open up the brainstorm today. And then once we coalesce the ideas from Tuesday and Thursday, we'll send them to you guys. And then we're going to create a manifesto that then we can start taking to, which we will also share to you guys, to get something we agree upon. And then we can share it, take it to our contacts at the IOC and LA 28, and then to other governing bodies as well. So I'm just going to share my screen real quick to just, kind of frame the discussion, and then we'll have at it. So hold on one second. Okay. So these are the main categories that we were talking about the other day. And this is in no particular order. Issues of transportation. How can we go faster, higher, stronger on transportation? Food and beverages, energy, apparel. We only discussed a bit, but I'm glad we have Doug on the line for sure. How we measure, and then I didn't write this down, but should have. Tell the story, engaging the athletes, fans, and other stakeholders, and then reaching stakeholders, mainly fans, who don't ever go to an Olympic Games, but they're like 1 billion or 2 billion people who are watching on TV and elsewhere. So I'm going to take that down. If you want me to put it back up at any time, just let me know. But this is like any brainstorm. There are absolutely no bad ideas. And my perspective is, the bigger the idea, the more audacious the idea, the better. Because we're going to, like, the problem is huge. The opportunities for solving it are huge. If we go small, we're not going to realize the biggest opportunity, bang for the buck, so to say. And it takes as long and as much work to get something small done as it does to get something big done. At least I've found that to be true. So let's go big. So anyone who would like to start, let's hear what you have to say.
Could I start? I can't see hands, but can I just jump in really quickly?
Yep, Jenny starts.
Okay, cool. My one takeaway / question would be around the verbiage of climate change. So I noticed a lot, especially for the rowing venue, there was a lot of talk about it's going to be so hot, you're going to not be able to function, your bodies are going to be breaking. Like they just absolutely were so extreme about the heat. And to me, that's a very low-hanging fruit for any naysayer to be critical of any environmental action plan, because if it is not hot, the immediate backlash is, oh, well, climate change isn't that bad. And I still heard people actually say that, and I had to restrain myself. So I question, with LA, with the next Winter Games, is there opportunity to, as eco athletes or in our campaigns, ensure that the verbiage kind of encapsulates all that is climate change? It's not focused solely on heat or focused solely on garbage or focused solely on water quality. We sort of define climate change in a way that, if one thing isn't as apparent as it's supposed to be, we can't have sort of critics turn around and say, oh, we shouldn't put that much effort into it because it's not even real. Because I did hear that. And it's like, no, that's not how climate change works. I don't have time to explain to you how this works. But, if you would have had a little bit more knowledge on what the issue at hand is, that you would understand how ignorant that comment is, if that makes sense. So it's not so much, let's not talk about the heat or let's not talk about the pollution, but in championing a whole group, maybe there's a way we could be more powerful in how we say what we say, with different words but the same mission. That makes sense.
So if I'm hearing you, to put it like into a sound bite, it's powerful, more powerful language that communicates the universality of the problem. And now I'm putting my own words into it, or problems, and the universality of the solutions. And as athletes, who better, this is why we use the term climate comeback, who better to talk about being behind in the game and making a comeback but athletes? Is that kind of sort of a fair summation?
Yep, pretty spot on.
All right.
Jenny, do you have any words, messages, phrases that you would prefer to see at the forefront?
Well, I do love the climate comeback. It's just where I'm coming from with this perspective is just when the environmental movement of the Paris Olympic Games, or environmental, I guess, outcry of what it could have looked like, it was all focused on one sole issue of climate change rather than climate change as a whole. I don't know if I'm describing sort of what I'm seeing correctly, but it's more so not so much what eco athletes can do, because I think the verbiage that we use is very, very, very fully encompasses everything. It's more so the games themselves. Like, we talk about writing letters to pressure these big companies. Maybe those letters can include, hey, don't, if you're gonna make a statement about how you're being environmentally friendly, don't focus on one sole issue of climate change, sort of use our language so people can hear the same kind of words and understand it in a greater capacity, if that makes sense. So it's sort of bringing everyone with us with the words that we use, like climate comeback, climate action, overall sustainability and what that looks like, rather than little focal points of little things that are being done or not done to a certain degree.
Got it. All right. Thank you so much, Jenny. Now we have Selena has her hand raised. Selena from Germany, you're up.
I have one idea and then one question too. So the idea was, so on campus at Vandy, something we worked on was like kinetic tiles. So our idea was to put them around the dining hall, and basically they produce energy whenever like someone steps on it. And the dining hall is something that like a lot of people like walk. So I wonder if that's maybe an idea to do at some type of venue in LA, where, because there's going to be so many like spectators. So whenever they walk, like they immediately like create energy. So maybe obviously like you can't put the whole like pavement because they're really expensive, but maybe like a couple like big points you can put those tiles.
You know what? As you're saying that, all I'm thinking of is Los Angeles is Disneyland, right? And because so you could imagine like some kind of, energy tiled walkway in Disneyland, right? Well, what if they did one where the fans travel, and Disneyland is actually in Anaheim, which is south of LA, but some of the venues are going to be there. So, and they're not creating any new or constructing any new venues or in Los Angeles, much like they did not in Paris. But maybe that is something that we can encourage somewhere where fans go, and then you could keep a scoreboard.
Yeah, or like, yeah, it kind of maybe put the education like with the like put it together in some sort of way. I think that might be.
I just thought of Disney as while you were talking.
Yeah, so if there was maybe like a spot in the village or near one of the venues, if they identified some places where there would be extremely high traffic area, since you said they're expensive, I guess they chose wisely at Vandy to put it in the dining hall where there's a lot of foot traffic. And when I use reusable water bottles in airports and other locations, they keep count of how many water bottles have been saved every time somebody refills a bottle. Maybe there could be something based on the foot traffic that would display how much energy is being created by everyone who's walking over the tiles. I've never heard of those. That's very cool.
I do think with that, sorry, because I know for our dining hall, like in the dining hall, they have a display of how much food is wasted, and people do not care at all. It just like keeps piling up. They don't care. So maybe like a way to make it more fun or interactive might be cool.
What if there was a fan challenge that, no. I was thinking, if you had some kind of like fan challenge that you could encourage fans to do some kind of environmental good on their way to the games, at the games, etc. And then either some fan who did the most would get an Olympic medal.
Wow. Olympic medal would be an insane prize. I don't know if they would do that.
I know, but this is like
Brainstorm, I know.
We're in a crisis with Chaz opportunity.
Maybe
anyway.
they could do a special medal that's its own thing for that. But that would be motivating for sure. I'd be very motivated.
Add it to the list. Now, Selena, you said you had a question.
I have a question too. I don't know how much like politics play a part in like organizing the Olympics. I know like the IOC is part of it, but I don't know with the upcoming election, like if Trump were to be elected, I don't know too much about US politics, not being from there. Not going to vote, obviously, because I can't. But from what I've heard, in Europe, it doesn't look super promising for the climate. So I wonder, like, if he would have any power in going against climate initiatives at LA 28.
I mean, there's so much in there to unpack. Let's hope let's just say this. The IOC is an international body. LA 28 is well on its way. So all we can say is we can hope that there's no interference in a negative way from a future Trump administration if it happens. I know that's kind of tepid language, but it's basically what I got. The best I can say. So we'll just have to proceed. I still think we just have to proceed as if that's not a factor, and just go as big as we can and as smart as we can.
Does anyone have a hand up? Because I have a question if not.
I have one thing to add about the medal idea. I don't know if that would be like the best idea, because I feel like athletes might not get behind that. Just from like a sort of selfish point of view.
Yeah.
However, a torch would be sick. Like if you win, you get an Olympic torch, because those are awesome, and they're I think athletes would also be like, yeah, have a torch. You know what I mean? Because you want the athletes behind it too.
Ooh, and maybe now going back to Selena's idea, maybe you could make the last bit of the torch relay that tiled area, because the torch relay is going to go all over the US, but it's going to end up at the LA Coliseum, I think, which is where the Olympics opening ceremonies are going to be. And what if that last mile was part of that? Anyway.
Yeah, and then
sorry. Good.
Oh, sorry. I was gonna say, and then you could have like if you wanted that, if they're expensive, right? You could have it just as like a finish line, so that as people get through the Olympic torch carrying, they have to like cross the finish line, and that will be sort of, you want to like gamify it. So it's exciting for them, so they can cross the finish line. They're like, oh, we won, whatever. It's like exciting. And then other high traffic areas, which could also be gamified, is if you, in Paris, they had the Champions Park. So all the winners, the medalists, and also a bunch of spectators go to the Champions Park, and it was literally like a strip of walkway that the athletes just walk back and forth on. So that's also another area, again, a smaller surface area with relatively a high amount of foot traffic.
Oh, I like that. And I have no idea what they're like. My mind is boggling now. Like, I have no idea how the marathon's going to be in the LA versus like if it was as it was in Paris, where it didn't end up in a stadium, but it ended up, on the public street. That could also be. Oh yeah, this is a good. We can go. Yeah, there are a lot of possibilities. Selena, thank you for that idea.
Sorry to jump in. I see Oliver and Rudy have their hands up. I got to run in 3 minutes to another meeting, but I'll be in LA next week, Lou. And the Wasserman Group is one of the investors in my company. So I'm meeting with Mike Watts, who's number 2 behind Casey. Casey Wasserman's obviously the chairman of the Olympic Committee for 28. So if we can compile all of this from these conversations, I'm building a relationship with that group pretty closely. So I'll be able to get right to the top guy at the Olympic Committee. We're talking to them from my company's perspective. Textiles is the second largest polluter on the planet next to oil and gas. So for us, we're doing all of the apparel, security, volunteers, culinary, with our technology, which is all eco-friendly, environmentally biodegradable, and has no synthetics in it. So that's my angle into that, but I can of course bring all of these options once I'm in those meetings.
Awesome. Thank you so much. When are you having your meetings with them?
I'm at the Sustainability Sourcing Journal Conference in LA next Thursday, and so I'll be in LA for that week. So Tuesday, Wednesday, we're just finding the time to meet with their team. So, and if it's not next week, if we don't have everything compiled by next week, so I'm not going to bring some half-baked.
Yeah, I think we want to make sure we have it right.
Yeah, but I'm just letting you know for future that we'll have an audience with the top people for the Olympic Committee for LA.
Oh, that is so rocking cool.
Okay, I got to run, team.
All right.
I'll follow up with you later, Lou. Thanks,
Patches.
Always good to see you. Bye, everybody.
Go Canada.
Liver, I appreciate it.
The Canadians are bringing it. All right, but now I'm going to, and in fact, you know what? I'm going to go to Rudy because you had your hand raised first, and then we'll go back to Canada to Oliver. But first, Rudy in the DC area.
Yes. Okay. Touch on a few things that we've been talking about with the medal idea, maybe rather than doing we can do a medal. So Team USA does this thing where athletes, after they get a medal, can give like a medal of thank you to a family member or a coach or something. And
I did not know that.
in Paris, it looked like, I think it's sponsored by Michelob or something ridiculous like that, which is silly. But the medal looks like an Olympic medal, but it's something totally different. So that's definitely an idea where like maybe you're not giving a real Olympic medal, but you're giving something that looks a lot like it. I think also just paying people, saying that there's like, oh, if you're the most sustainable person or whatever, you have the most points from this gamification thing that we're kind of drafting up, you get $1,000. $1,000 to one person is a lot. Obviously, $1,000 in the grand scheme of the Olympics is nothing. But it gives a more tangible reward for somebody to try to, you know, actually rack up points and be more sustainable. I don't know what kind of effects that would have on people's behavior with that type of stuff, but just an idea.
Oh yeah,
I do
so rewards,
I
financial
do think the
rewards.
game of sorry,
Yeah,
go ahead.
or you could get them tickets to the closing ceremonies,
Yeah.
and here's another idea that I've mentioned to a couple of people on this call, and we talked about it the other day, about one of my things is having Eco Athletes House at LA 28 and having, because I know there are like there's US House or Switzerland House, or
Yeah.
not every country has a house, but some of them do. And if we had a house for eco athletes sponsored with different athletes, in my vision as it is right this second, is having athletes come as who are interested in this every day of the Olympics, having a different kind of, one day is transportation, one day is plant-based, one day is, and we would invite and kind of corral media to come in there and talk to the athletes who are into this. But I could see bringing these game of the fan winners as well in to meet the athletes at Eco Athletes House. That's a vision.
I think that's a great idea, also from the perspective of being able to host something like that with the focus being on sustainability and being able to then in turn afterwards be like, look, we were able to host this event with X number of people attending every day, and we're able to provide plant-based foods and sustainable transportation, whatever, all these things that you were able to do despite it being a larger event or some sort of a house or something, to be like, look, all these other houses or all these other sponsors and entities who have houses could also do it more sustainably. Because like leading by example is obviously one of the best ways to prove that something is possible. But yeah, gamification is just good. It does something to our simple monkey brains when you get points for doing something and you get a reward in return.
Hey man, you guys are all gamified to the max. You guys are competitive to the max. So
Totally.
what that's all about.
I think just building on some of the stuff I brought up and Jen brought up earlier with some of the stuff that can just be expanded on, like more continued to provide filling stations instead of bottles, but provide more filling stations so there's more incentive for people to fill them, and not just in the village, but maybe at stadiums and then more of the public facing areas, so that there's not incentive for people to have to buy something when they go into a stadium. I know concessions is a really big moneymaker for events like this, but figuring out a way to do it that encourages reuse and refilling rather than just buying more and more plastic. Providing more transportation like bikes and electric scooters and electric buses. I think LA specifically is going to be a tough challenge because there's no train system, which means they're going to have to provide buses. making sure that those buses are electric is really important, but also providing better transportation info and planning. And in Paris, there was a lot of people when we would leave the village and we would try to go meet with each other somewhere in public, everyone was just taking Ubers. And then
Oh,
me and a couple other athletes were like, the train system is not only faster and cheaper, but it's way more sustainable. But because these other athletes weren't, they're from the US, they're from the Midwest, they're from places where there isn't any public transportation. They're just used to having to take rides everywhere. So it's not even built into their system that they can take the train. Showing how easy it is or providing better access to planning transportation to places would be very useful, and making it more apparent to both the athletes and the public to be like, hey, this is how you can get around, especially in LA where it's going to be difficult to maybe plan trips because there's going to be a lot of new bus routes and things going on. And then the last thing I wanted to touch on was traffic is going to be um, terrible in LA because they usually designate Olympic lanes. LA's traffic is already terrible. Maybe somehow incentivizing the public, the people who live there, to drive less, or maybe encourage working from home during the Olympic Games. Um, Stuff put in place by the local government or the IOC to encourage the people who are living there to drive less would not only benefit one, the flow of the games in terms of traffic control, but also would be great from an environmental standpoint because less driving overall is good. And we live in a day and age where remote work is kind of standard for most companies at this point. So it's definitely possible. So kind of disincentivizing having to commute to work during that time within the city would be an awesome thing to see. I do think a lot of these initiatives, I worry that the US, this is kind of a side note, the US, the way our government is set up, there's a lot of incentives from oil, gas, big corporations to push against sustainability. So I wonder from an IOC perspective if there's anything they can do to kind of fight against that.
we got to push them.
Right.
That's what this is about. Now we go to, and thank you, Rudy. Thank you so much. Now we go to Oliver.
Yeah, I love all these ideas. Just on that note, they did come out and say they want to make LA car free, and then kind of backtracked a bit and said public transit first will be their priority. But I do think they're trying to address obviously the traffic issues and just the setup of the city. Got something kind of completely different. Again, this might not be aligned with what Eco Athletes does. I'm pretty new here, but what I've noticed through a lot of the work that I've done and a lot of the conversations that I've had is NSOs and international federations kind of lack the money to really take climate action seriously. And so what they try to do is minimize their own, call it scope or boundary of their impact, and try to put a lot of it onto the countries, the teams attending, whoever. And this stuff costs money. Like for Paris, I think it was 52 million euros they put towards sustainability efforts. So if there's any way that we can try to tap into more money that can be distributed out through either the international Olympic federations or the sports federations themselves, the World Rowing, World Athletics, whoever's of the world, if we can push to release some money, maybe from the IOC, from whoever, that can be distributed out to the countries, the teams participating, there's going to be more likely, or I think that they'll be more likely to actually be action taken specifically around measuring their emissions and, paying the extra for flights, which are, a more direct route or different ways of having reducing emissions that way.
I think a big problem here is going to be that a lot of these sports associations are pretty much corrupted, at least in Europe and in Latin America. So getting that money and getting the sponsors might be a problem. But again, if we are going to try our best and keep on working on that issues, we might get someplace.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, and I saying this the other day, I think like I look at the green sports world as like a stool, and there are legs of the stool, and the stools are in no particular order, venues and teams, and that's where the green sports world is really kind of most planted itself, like LEED certified this, and so there's that. Then there are you guys, the athletes, who now we are activating, and you are activating yourselves. And then there are the sponsors, right? They want to, and then there are the media that cover it. And I think a way to take this out of, in essence, the to what Oliver was saying about the, you know, the federations don't have a lot of money, and all of that is true. However, who does have the money? The sponsors and the media. The media pay gazillions of dollars to broadcast this, and the sponsors pay gazillions of dollars to reach the audience that the media provides them. And so I think that is an area where I think we can have, like, where we should focus some of our efforts. Like, you know, and so who does the IOC accept as sponsors? Oh, no fossil fuel company sponsors. Like, I want to put that in a letter. You know, I want, and a car company that needs to, you know, if you want to be the official, if you want to replace Toyota, you got to have X% of your vehicles be EVs by 20 whatever. So then, and then how do we cover this to the gazillions of people who watch on television? I'll come back to that because there are other people who want to talk. Enya, did you want to say something else?
Yeah, just quickly to go on a more positive note now. I think now we've seen how sports we bring, or sports bring more and more attention, so sponsors are more likely to invest into sports and athletes. So with that being said, there's more and more eco and sustainable products out there and brands that are emerging now that could partner and sponsor us as eco athletes and then other sports and be part of the Olympics, and possibly our little Olympic house. So being that we can get the money from different sponsors, different brands, and not just one bigger one, the oil company. So
I like it. I also like, if I can draft on your draft, what the Olympic uh sponsorships cost a ton of money, both the IOC global ones and the LA 28 local ones, or whatever Olympics committee in a particular year. What if we went to the LA 28s of the world and say, hey, we need to have a plant-based food sponsor, an EV charging station sponsor, but those companies aren't the size of Coca-Cola or McDonald's or whatever. So there needs to be a carve out for green sponsorships. Maybe the benefits to the sponsors are lower than what McDonald's would get, but they would also be an Olympic sponsor and be able to have presence at the games, including at our Eco Athletes House. So that's another idea. And I believe Sadie has had her hand up for a while. So you are up next, Sadie, in Texas.
I think Jennifer did have it up before me.
No, I think you did. And then Jennifer.
Oh. No. But something I've been thinking about lately with this conversation is the difference between mitigation and adaptation right now for climate change. Because, so for example, my company called Everbridge, they do emergency alerting primarily for a lot of large sporting events like the Super Bowl before. And I've been trying to think about how we can squeeze into the Olympics, because that's part of my territory and part of what, you know, I'm working on and some of my colleagues are. And one thing specific about LA is, of course, the location when we talk about wildfires, when we talk about earthquakes, that sort of thing. So that's how my mind is seeing it, is what matters to them that would be so catastrophic that they would actually put money into something like that. So unfortunately, it seems like most of the conversations I've had, whether it's with governments or these other corporations, right now their shift is more towards adaptation, because it feels it's hopeless for them a little bit to go into mitigation. And then mitigation is more of you think about like ROI, and you think about also just for the good, like being a good Samaritan and doing what's right. But it seems like I'd love to tap more into that piece of the adaptation part and what makes it so specific about LA that we need to talk about climate action and what that looks like. And I know we talked about traffic, we talked about weather. I think what we all talk about in this group is how much the severe weather impacts our events, and LA is a hotspot for all of that when we talk about air pollution and everything else too. So what I think is, I'm curious to learn more about what the actual things they're thinking about for the Olympics are, to build a business case that we can more and kind of speak their language to get more funding for sustainable actions. Because I think about all these different ideas like competitions and Eco-Athletes House, that sort of thing. I feel like that's at one level, and the next level would be like a business case where we kind of cater to their language a little bit.
Really interesting perspective. I think of I have a couple of thoughts. One, I think that, yeah, I think adaptation is a reality, obviously. And so it would be interesting, a separate conversation simply just on adaptation as it relates to LA 28. And then some of those, whatever the specific ideas we talk about in that, could also make its way into if it's athlete driven, it can make its way into what we're putting together. And there could also be a separate line of how to get climate adaptation, to see where the LA 28 is on it, and to see where they can go. So that could be parallel to this athlete-led document.
Yeah, I think so too. Because this last thing, like how I envision it working in my company, while we're not necessarily climate mitigation focused, we deal with emergency alerting for a lot of those severe weather events. And so, but part of our language, since let's say if the IOC was to purchase our software and then we would promote it, we would talk about the critical event management of severe weather events. And then you'd have like a large company who's getting paid for their software to have the marketing and have more language regarding climate resilience or climate adaptation as well. That's how I'm trying to see it too. And I know there are a lot of companies, obviously, whether that's sponsors, whether IOC purchases from vendors, or for the vendors to put money into that marketing too.
And I actually think you could almost, because it's not an either or thing, right? It's mitigation and adaptation, adaptation and mitigation. I could see like a messaging that pairs both.
Yeah. I'm just thinking from like a public safety standpoint, because that is
you're
one
thinking
of the
actual
things.
Implementation.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm thinking from a public safety perspective that a lot of times, right, these top security, these CSOs and CTOs, whatever, they care about mitigation for their appearance, but like what's at the forefront is also going to be the public safety and security at the actual event. So I was thinking how we can play into that more. That way you get more people interested.
Awesome. We could have a separate chat on that and get the specifics, but I'm first of all glad that you brought that up just as a topic area. And I think we lost Jenny, who had her hand up, but I think that could be that she lost us, technologically wise. Any other comments? Because we're a little over time, but I just wanted to make sure we heard from everybody.
I did have a question. I'd love to hear. Gary, you were on both of our calls, right? And
Yes.
are you there? Are you muted?
Yeah, I'm here. Yes.
Great. So you heard Tuesdays and Thursdays, and you're also in the business of building communities that are very similar to an Olympic Village. So I was wondering if there were thoughts that you might have that you've seen by creating communities that are, smaller and somewhat self-contained, sort of like lessons learned of things that you tried that didn't work out, or best practices. Do you see similarities between the communities you build and the Olympic Villages? And if so, what would you say from your experience?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I would say that adaptive reuse or just use of things that already exist is going to be a major aspect there. Obviously, construction materials themselves have major sustainability implications if not done correctly, or even when done to the current code and standards. Um, I like the gamification of things. I would suggest maybe having an opportunity for whether it be the athletes and or the attendees, whatever goals and objectives we put together, I think it'd be good to have at least one hit on each of the 17 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Maybe even like a scavenger hunt or activation type situation, to incorporate maybe some extra sponsorship opportunities, have a company sponsor a scavenger hunt that's taking you around LA or something like that. Or even activate in like the local, might I say it, Starbucks. I'm in Seattle, so it just what popped in my head. But just some examples. That's a lot of what we do within our commercial real estate developments, not just the development side of things, but the programmatic side through our foundation, I think is very important. So engaging the local organizations and companies in those activations, I think is going to be advantageous. And I don't know if it was this call, excuse me, or last call, but somebody had mentioned about bringing or having a higher focus on the local attendees as opposed to people flying in.
That was Tuesday. Because the
Yeah.
biggest, and I'm sure Sadie, you may know this, that the biggest generator of carbon emissions for a big event is fan travel. And especially at something like the Olympics where people are traveling in from all over the world, it's massive.
So I was just yesterday, actually, I don't know how long it's been on Netflix, but it was something with Bill Gates and kind of about the future of AI, robotics, and a bunch of other things. And one of the episodes was specific to sustainability, and it had like a pie chart that showed, where most of the emissions come from. And maybe contrary to popular belief, including, jet fuel, cars, trucks, all those things, I'm gonna say only, but I mean, 8% is a pretty massive chunk if we could, get that down. But transportation only accounts for 8% of the emissions of CO2. The bigger things, which I think maybe we could put a bigger lean into, would be like agriculture. Now obviously with the Olympics, how do we find ways? I think there's certainly ways with the different verticals of where the food's coming from, how it's prepared, what goes on with the animals or not animals. I think we had mentioned, and again, I don't know if it was this call or last call, in terms of, vegetarian options and not allowing people to choose, but making that just the standard, and, having people make their choices within that realm of, choices. So anyway, I think I bring all that up to say that I think, re-educating ourselves on exactly where some of those bigger emission chunks come from, in ways that the development to an Olympic Village, the current event, and then even, and I think even more importantly, the fallout after the Olympics, what goes on after to maintain the standard that was set during the event. As developers, we don't just want to come in and, hey, here's our idea. We're going to come in, plop it down, and someone else is going to have to maintain it. Like, let's integrate with the community, the organizations that exist there, the individuals that exist there to set a standard and then allow it to be maintained, in perpetuity. Obviously, that's what sustainability is really about. But anyway, a lot to say, maybe not too much, but those are my opinions.
Yeah, with that maintaining the standards, as we were talking about transportation, I think a good thing to emphasize when we make those recommendations is that they would live on after the Olympics. So the electric buses and things like that, I would hope would then be incorporated into whatever their public transportation is continuously after the games are long gone.
And it could, but I'm thinking, like, as Gary's talking, I'm thinking, like, could the Olympic Village become an eco village after the games?
Absolutely.
Now, and he didn't pay me to say that. I just kind of came up with it, right?
And another thing that you've done that I wonder if you could foresee this happening. So let's say the timing was the same and the Olympics were going to start happening in July. That also just happens to be a time when it's really easy to have food grown. So, for example, if the Olympic Village was planning in advance, do you think it would be reasonable to have some sort of planting and farming in the Olympic Village itself? I mean, how much more local could the food be? There's probably going to be decent sized grounds, and there could even be like urban farming that's up on the roofs of these things. Would there be, I would think, enough time if games started in July that if they had advanced planning, they could do some planting in the early spring such that they could actually harvest food on site for a July, August Olympics?
Yeah, well, absolutely. And we're talking about LA, so
Yeah.
it's not like the growing season's that short. It's very, very long. So even just the addition of a hoop house or a high tunnel or a greenhouse or something in that realm, you could definitely make it so that the harvest times are aligning with, when you would need, the food within the Olympic Village or the event itself. So and to your point, July is already a good harvest date, but you could certainly, do some aeroponics, hydroponics, with solar panels that's powering the pumps, lower a lot of the emissions, but also be producing local food. I think there's certainly a case there and very much attainable, no doubt.
All right, good to know.
Very good to know. And yeah, when you think about California overall as like humongous agricultural breadbasket of our produce, especially. I mean, it's begging for that. Any other comments or thank you so much for staying on, for your really insightful thoughts and great brainstorming. So we're gonna kind of cull what we got from Tuesday and today, come back to you guys with kind of a list that then we would put into something we would take to LA 28 and the IOC, and we can take to other governing bodies. But since we have contacts at both of those, and it's early-ish in the game, I think now's the time to do it. So,
one very quick question, Gary, have you ever had chickens in any of your communities?
Yes.
And did it work? Or would you think it would be too heavy of a lift for something like the Olympics?
No, that's definitely attainable. I'm sure there are urban ag master gardeners and people who already do stuff in the area, just a matter of identifying them and having them be the ones who run and maintain the farm. I mean, at our farm there in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, in one year, we've had over, 2,500 volunteers come through with just 2 farm managers, so it's definitely something that could be easily done if our small foundation did it. I think the Olympic Foundation or organization could certainly do something like that.
by the way, Jenny's back in, and I know she had her hand up. And Jenny, we were about to end the call, but since you are back, and hopefully you can hear us and maybe we can hear you. If you have one more idea, we do not want to shortchange you.
Sorry. Yes, thank you so much. I was, trying to get the stupid cellular. I don't know if it was talked about, but it was way back when we were talking about money from the IOC and the IOC being so corrupt and how that was kind of an issue. Understatement of the century. But I did notice how in Paris, and I'm not sure if I missed this when I couldn't connect, but in Paris, the Paris 2024 organization and the IOC, it was so evident to me how separate those two organizations are. And the Paris 2024 seemed to be really going, like, marching by the beat of their own drum in terms of honestly how they conducted themselves, how they displayed themselves on social media, how they utilize marketing. I just thought they did a lot more of a modern approach to sort of their own organization and their own self-promotion, which I thought was fascinating because the IOC just seems so archaic and that's so on brand for them to have just like not a lot showing other than, how much money they have and how much McDonald's sponsorship they have. So in saying that, I agree with getting sponsors for the LA games. I also think we have a unique opportunity that the games are in LA where, okay, yeah, we talk a lot about how the media is such a huge giant of the Olympic Games, but Los Angeles, Hollywood, like, talk about people caring about optics. LA only cares about how they come across and what they look like. And especially, this is like by no means, it's just in the USA, they're going to want to show off the games on a scale unlike any other games, in so much that USA is, the USA of the world. And the Olympics come so infrequently to the United States, and the United States is very aware, I would say, if not North America, is very aware of how in advance, they're just lagging behind in all things environment compared to, the Chinas and the Europes of the world. There's only one China in 1 year. You don't think so?
In some way, yes. In some ways, no.
Okay, well, maybe I'm just coming up at it from a cynic perspective, but I just think in saying that there is opportunity to be like, you know what, we're here too. And maybe LA can get behind that. So yeah, that was my brainstorming. And then with that, it was just the bikes. I mean, I think Rudy mentioned that he was using an Uber in LA, or goodness, in Paris. But I agree that Ubers were definitely frequent, but the bikes were so easy, and there were electric bikes and they were everywhere, and it was very, very useful and very convenient. So maybe that's something that we can look at in promotion.
I think they could. LA, there's a company called Revel. I don't know if you guys have heard of it. It's like an Uber, but it's all electric vehicles, but it's only in a few cities. However, I believe LA, if not a city now, is going to be one. I have to check to see if LA is one of the cities that has Revel. I'm like, that's an example of that green sponsorship idea that I was mentioning before. Like, Revel is tiny compared to Uber and Lyft, and Uber and Lyft are tiny compared to, well, they're not tiny. But anyway, but if LA 28 was smart, they'd do a deal with Revel and it would be a few zeros less than what they would get from Uber, but they would show that they're serious about this stuff.
Yeah. And with the bikes, like, so is anyone aware of whether LA has something like New York has city bikes?
Yes, they do. And they're doing a bike share, bike valet program for the fans. I don't know about what they're doing for the athletes, which the Paris, which Jenny mentioned and Rudy mentioned, and the athletes from Tuesday mentioned that they had bikes at their disposal. I don't know about, all I've read about is the bikes for fans
in LA.
Allison, did you have your hand up earlier for a second, or did I just totally make that up?
I did not have my hand up, but I've really enjoyed like hearing all of these ideas.
Okay. All right. All right. I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't missing you.
Oh, that's okay. No, I appreciate it.
Awesome. And it's also so cool that you're in the beautiful place of Flagstaff. All right. I think now we can wrap up. Again, thank you so much for your ideas and your time. It's great to see you all and those who had to leave early as well. We'll be announcing another community chat which will probably be in the next month to 6 weeks, and it will be around plant-based food. So Gary, that'll be one that I know you will be on, and hopefully all of y'all will be on.
Right. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Have a great rest of
Thank
your
you.
Thursday and great weekend, and climate comeback, everybody.
You too. Bye.
Yeah.
Hey,
Guys,
Ian.
I just want to say I'm gonna write a document about it and I'm just gonna send it to you.
Oh,
I don't know
awesome.
if you guys were writing it down or you're just gonna go check the reporting, but
So appreciate it, Inya.
yeah, I'll get it to you today or tomorrow, okay?
Okay, cool. And did you see what I wrote you
No. Where?
in the chat?
Oh.
I wrote,
Oh yes, the bridge.
yeah, because I was thinking the bridge eco village could be a really interesting concept in the EU, and like once, because Gary's going to be launching it. The first part of the first eco village is actually launching next year
Okay.
in Pennsylvania, and I
Okay.
think like, so Patch is just reading you in on Enya is an ecopreneur, entrepreneur, like brain, like always thinking of new ideas. And I was thinking, oh, she could be the Bridges Europe rep or Europe vice president.
Yeah. Well, we have a lot of community gardens around in Europe, so people just go to the gardens in the cities and they grow their vegetables. And nowadays they've been creating these new buildings and they put moss on them or different types of plants. So instead of concrete, well, they do concrete and then on top of that they do a bunch of moss. It looks very nice and it brings more biodiversity and reduces heat on the building.
That's great.
Awesome.
Yeah. So
thank you so much, Enya.
I have
thank you.
it's a focus group of one. Lou, I'm telling Lou this for the first time too. I met somebody this past weekend who is actually a Rutgers graduate also. Organic chemistry, you. For basically a chemical company that is the creator of things like the hydration powders, like Element. Noon is actually hiring them, if you're familiar with that one, to make their product better. And he was saying that he could do sort of like customized powders for like somebody who wanted to have their own. So from an ecopreneur standpoint, like one of the packaging issues that they've recently conquered is they have packets. So Element is better than some because many of those packages are plastic. Elements is foil, which is better than plastic, but they now have packages that are actually biodegradable. So I don't know if so a lot of times when people have brands, they have something that's slightly customized. Like you might have your brand of hydration powder and I might have mine. Mine might have vitamin B12 in it because it's like being marketed to vegans, and yours might not, but yours might have like certain flavors that are, yours, and I have mine. And I don't know. So I was wondering, like, is this a conversation that the people who are interested in ecopreneur type of things to have, like, or do we have people who might want to invest in having their own hydration powder that's in biodegradable packets?
There's been a lot more initiatives towards biodegradable and compostable packaging and single-use plastics have been reduced in Europe. They're illegal in some countries now. So yes, the
So-
packaging.
I was gonna say, so Lou, so imagine like instead of all those individual bottles of Gatorade,
Right.
I throw
Yeah.
that reusable.
Yeah.
And on top of it, if the packet is biodegradable. So I don't know. I just wonder if it would be worth us like
Have you heard of, instead of a toothpaste, you can take, it's like a little mint, you put it in the mouth and use some water. So
Yeah,
things
I've
like
seen
that
that.
have been coming up. Yeah. And gums, for example, we eat the gums, or people eat gums, and they're, the worst thing for the environment because they never disappear. But they've been creating more and more biodegradable gums in Europe.
So Patches, is your suggestion that we we connect the Rutgers guy that you mentioned to some of our ecopreneurish champions to start a conversation?
Yeah, to see. Is that
Yeah,
something?
I mean, athletes have to have electrolytes. And what I've noticed is in the US, there's more and more of those packets. In Europe, we don't have as many. We have a lot of tablets in this.
Right.
Here, I'll show you. In
Noon.
this,
Yeah.
like that.
Is that Noon?
No, it's multi-norm. It's some, I don't know. Yeah. So,
Right.
yeah, it's plastic.
Then the other one, the one that I use is in plastic too. But when he
Mhm.
comes out with the biodegradable one, so I don't know, Lou, if it's a question of like whoever his client is that's coming out with these products, maybe they need eco-athlete spokespeople to talk about not just the hydration aspect, but the sustainability aspect of their product. Or do we have eco-athletes that are looking to like actually invest and have a product?
Maybe,
Like Doug is doing with apparel,
or maybe it's an and, not an or. Maybe it's there's if his company or the companies he works with are interested in having eco-athletes champions as credible ambassadors, that's awesome. And then in terms of investors or a lot of our champions, especially the young ones, they don't have a lot of money to invest, but they could become part of a team as a
collective of some kind.
yeah, or employees or
ambassadors
or both.
Yeah.
So
okay, sounds like it's worth me
noodling.
Interested.
Well, last thing, I have to run, but in Europe, I can see these things are going on way quicker just because of the policies and laws being placed by the European Union and the countries. So I think if the US wants to move forward, the first place to go is education when people are young, so they're actually know what that means and they learn while they're young before they create their own opinions. And then second, placing those new laws in place. Thank you. I'll have to go.
Okay.
Great talking to you guys. Take care, stay safe. Bye.
Bye.
All righty. We have quite a list of ideas.
I know, and it's so cool that she's gonna do the write-up.
I mean, I took notes, so I'll give them to you, but she's the one who came up with some whole detailed plan of some kind, right? Like
Yes.
unsolicited, just did it.
Yep, she's amazing. And so I want to help her get a job is what I want to help her do.
Yeah.
You
also in on the conversation that we had about making golf courses.
Yes, she's talked to I connected her with Geo Golf Environment Organization. So she may be doing some ambassador work with them.
Cool.
So let's see. Just quickly back to, oh, and I didn't show the Vote Climate video to this group, but we went way long, so yeah. So now we're up to, so Elena, I'm sorry, Brent said he collabed.
Oh, he accepted it?
He said he did. I haven't gone in and seen it because that happened like right before. I've been emailing with Elena, but she's doing a river cleanup today. And that's why she couldn't join us. But I asked her in the texting, I should say, if she could accept a collab invite, and she did not address that part of it. She just addressed not being able to come to the chat. But
okay, it's up on Brent's page.
It is on Brent's page?
It is.
Yay. So right now, we're about at, if you take Twitter and Instagram together, we're close to 20,000 views.
Sweet. And that'll go, and then he's added it, but so just so you know,
that doesn't include Nafisa.
It seems like there's an update with Instagram that now you can add a collaborator after the fact. Like, I was able to go in, as it turns out, he was not invited as a collaborator. He was simply tagged in the post. It's easy to do because it's on the same screen. It's like literally.
No, I know it is on the same screen.
Yeah, so like if your finger is too fat and you just click the wrong thing, that can happen.
Wait, did I do that?
No, Belle did, but I already sent her info about it.
Okay, because I'm like, geez, I'm just screwing up left and right.
And like I said, it's an easy mistake to do. But unlike before, it's now a mistake that can be fixed. Because when they first started doing
wait, I'm going to stop recording. We don't need to record this part.